The Tories turn to Boris to combat the Nigel Farage threat. We're going to read into this piece from the Telegraph, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from the Telegraph with the headline of "The Tories turn to Boris to combat the Farage threat." The former PM signs letters to wavering voters amid warning that Labour could be in power for a generation if support goes to reform. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share this across social media so others are notified of this video. So my first instincts, I just want to stress this, guys, is that this is quite a tongue-in-cheek article from the Telegraph, because if you read the headline there and your immediate thought is, oh no, Boris Johnson is back in the political sphere, oh, he's going to be on TV, like we already got this from Nigel Farage, and straight away I want to say, stop. That's not what this is, because that's what the headline gives that indication. Now, at the time of this recording, it's entirely possible that Boris Johnson's position may change and he may be doing more public things, perhaps for the Conservatives. That may be the possibility. But at the time of this recording, I've not seen that. But what this is basically Boris Johnson signing letters to voters and basically expressing his opinion about how dangerous a Labour government could be if you start with Labour. If you vote, how Labour can be problematic for this country. And yet, yes, I have my, and as you guys know, I have my reservations about Labour government, but I certainly would rather have a Labour government than the Conservative one, and on every single time. I really do, considering what the full last 14 years kind of speaks for itself. I actually had somebody who thought I was a Tory enabler, dude, it's just crazy. So someone in the comments said that I was a Tory enabler, apparently. I know, crazy. But, yeah, I mean, so it's not as although that Boris Johnson is literally putting himself back in the ring and throwing his weight behind Sunak, because we know the history. We know that Boris Johnson felt snubbed by Sunak, obviously, in the final days of his reign, and he's not going to let that go. And I can't see him doing a lot for the Conservatives. It would be weird to see Boris Johnson back in politics as an MP. I really hope he never becomes an MP again. I would not be surprised in our current political system if somehow in the future he ends up becoming a Lord. Cross fingers that a Labour government will change that. Obviously, we don't know that for sure, but Boris is not going away. Still, like all the talks about Nigel Farage here, that this may be the start of something with Boris Johnson in the last few weeks in the run-up to the general election, or this could be nothing. So let's have a gander and see what they're actually saying here. So Boris Johnson is being drafted in by the Tories to play a more active role in the election campaign as the party seeks to counter the threat from reform. So tens of thousands of letters signed by Mr Johnson are due to be delivered to voters later this week. Telegraph can reveal after the Conservatives warned that a vote for the reform risks putting Labour in power for a generation. Direct mail drive urging people to vote Tory is the former Prime Minister's closest involvement yet in the Conservatives' attempt to defy the polls and win a surprise re-election. Among these voters believed to have been targeted are wavering Tories who backed the party when Mr Johnson was leader. They are now tempted by reform. On Monday, the Conservatives issued a starkest warning yet over Nigel Farage's party after the Reform manifesto launched, saying, "If you're thinking about voting for reform and a generation under Labour scares you, there's only one way to prevent it: vote Conservative." Yeah, this dynamic of like please don't vote for reform, you're going to hand it to Labour. And it's like, well, what you guys, you've kind of buggered up on immigration for, you keep saying you're going to do more. Nigel Farage kind of hit the nail on the head about immigration with the Conservatives. And he kept saying, you guys kept saying you were going to bring immigration down, and every single time you failed to do so. And it appeals to people. And the reality is, it appeals to people. Like I said, he's a grifter. He knows what to say. He'll say anything to people and to get their appeasement. And the thing is that the problem is that for the Conservatives, they've been saying one thing and not doing a lot. And they've been doing quite a lot of that for a long time, which is another thing why people are like kind of a bit fed up at this point as well. So you have to put that into context as well. In the last fortnight, there has also been discussions about Mr. Johnson appearing in person on the campaign trail to boost the party's fortunes. Now, like I said, at the time of this recording, I've not seen that, but that may change. Isaac Larisco, the Tory campaign manager who also ran Mr. Johnson's successful 2019 election bid, is known to admire his former boss's communication skills. Mr. Lavendo and Mr. Johnson have been in regular contact during the campaign, talking over the phone and texting, including about how the party's former Prime Minister could help out. But it remains unclear how much Mr. Johnson is willing to do to support Mr. Sunak, a man of many of his allies still blamed for his ousting from Downing Street. It was Mr. Sunak's resignation as Chancellor in July 2022 which triggered a ministerial stampede for the exit doors, with Mr. Johnson resigning 36 hours later. So far, Mr. Johnson has limited his campaign role to video endorsements from individual MPs who have asked for them and pro-Tory columnists in the Daily Mail. But those election articles often make no explicit mention of Mr. Sunak, and the video support message made public so far have tended to be for loyal allies. Yeah, so this they have here at the moment on Reform propping up a Labour Party. Current polling, if 36 people of Reform wanted Tories, if 56. I like this is just from the Telegraph, really. It's up to you whether you want to take belief in that or not, but we know that Labour are pretty surefire in to win this election, but obviously we'll have to wait and see. So Mr. Sunak and Mr. Johnson have not talked during the campaign, according to one Johnson ally, suggesting their relationship has not fully healed. They have shared texts the day before the snap election was called about Israel-Gaza policy issues. One Boris ally told the Telegraph that the former Prime Minister was still weighing up whether to campaign in person. On why the Tory campaign wanted to deploy him, a source said the simple answer is that he can cut through. There's a rapidity in this Conservative campaign. I do think if he does go out and campaign, I do think he can draw some vote. He can claw some votes back for the Conservative Party, despite everything that's been, despite what a lot of people feel about him. He can win back some of those votes. He can, because that's how because it's Boris Johnson, you know. Sources in both the Tory campaign and close to Mr. Johnson dismissed any suggestion there was friction between the two camps. Okay. They stressed Mr. Johnson had not even turned down any specific offer to join a campaign event. For more than 6 months, there has been speculation about whether Mr. Johnson would appear on the campaign trail this election. One idea was that he would do so in the former Labour Red Wall seat in the north, which he won in 2019. Mr. Johnson's allies have said in the past Mr. Sunak would have to call and ask for his help. With limited time before the election, Mr. Johnson oversees commitments and compliance his situation. He travels abroad again this week and is due to return only shortly before polling day. Mr. Johnson sees himself as an election winner, and he may be reluctant to appear part of a campaign facing defeat, especially if he should he ever wish to launch a political comeback. One Johnson ally predicted he would not end up doing an in-person campaign event. The Tories are still trailing Labour by around 20%. With less than 3 weeks before the general election on July the 4th, some polling analysts suggest they could be left with under 100 MPs. So Mr. Sunak is under pressure after months without improvements in the polls, and he faced calls from some of the Tories to go for the juggler in attacks on Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader. The campaign is now also talking up the prospect of a Labour supermajority to sway voters back into Tories. But Mr. Sunak has avoided personally talking about a supermajority, instead insisting that he can still win the election. Spokesperson Mr. Johnson said Boris Johnson has always said vote Conservative at every election, and he continues to say that this time. I'm sure he's saying that at this time as well. Yeah, I don't see Boris Johnson like he's not like a grifter like Nigel Farage. He's a bit, I think he's someone, considering how I do think he's someone that actually may have some care about the Conservative Party. I think he actually doesn't. Considering the demise of it, I think he's not happy about how this is being done, I would say. I'm going by speculation here. The campaign, like, this is all blame Labour. Oh, Labour will do this and Labour will do this and all this kind of stuff. It's just like, the thing is that the problem is they have nothing appealing, the Conservatives, because their political party, regardless of who's been the Prime Minister, the Chancellor, or whatever position they've been in power. The same party's been in power for 14 years. It's been the same in 14 years. People just want something different. And again, whatever you might think of Nigel Farage or what you think of the Reform Party, he's offering something different. Something that some people, find appealing. He said he's going to deal with all these immigrants. Will he deal with all those immigrants? I'm very skeptical about it, because he's not, they see him as a vote winner, a game changer, yet he's not actually done anything for the country. I mean, he campaigned for Brexit, and how did that work out, And I've said before about, if he becomes an MP, we'll have to see how he actually does if he becomes an MP for Clacton. Is he going to make people in Clacton's lives better, in all seriousness? That's obviously up for questioning as well. But obviously, as for Boris Johnson, do I think he's going to actually make some kind of appearance? At the time of this recording, I'm going to say no. I can see him doing the odd video here saying, go vote Conservative, or doing these letters and that, but I don't see him anywhere near the front lines of the battlefield of this in any way, shape or form. I don't think they will. I think he may do stuff behind closed doors, behind to try and help boost things for the Conservatives, but that's about it. I don't think I see anything more than that. And I think this piece is trying to give some Conservatives supporters hope that perhaps there is a comeback coming. That's kind of what I see this piece as. I don't see this as a game changing for the Conservatives. If Boris Johnson was to return, I don't see it like that at all. But maybe some of you disagree with me. Maybe some of you think that Boris Johnson is actually going to come back into the full throttle and actually try and boost things for the Conservatives. If he does, do you actually think he could pull some voters back for the Conservatives from Reform or even from Labour if Boris Johnson was to step into the frontline politics? Do you think that Boris Johnson is just going to stay out of it and not bother, because why would he want to damage his reputation? Let me know your thoughts and more on all of this in the comment section down below. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you could do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching. Hope to catch you all very, very soon.